Hi, this is Joel. I'm helping a friend today get their patio garden, so we're going to plant some potatoes in a pot. So just real quick to introduce the materials we're going to work with. This is a roughly 7 to 8 gallon nursery pot. Inside I've got a standard potting mix, nothing special. I've filled the pot about 3/5 of the way, and then I've kind of scraped some of that soil over to the edges to create an even lower planting level. And we're going to be planting these potatoes. I wanted to show you this here. We're working with a variety called Red Lesota. It's a red skin, white flesh potato. And you may be able to see there's some little protuberances on here. These are the eyes of a potato. They're the growing points. These are the vegetative points that the new plants are going to grow from. But there's more than we need on one potato. And so what I've done is about 3 days ago, I cut one of those potatoes into several chunks that each have at least a couple of those eyes on them. And the reason I did it a couple days ago is that I wanted those cut surfaces to have a chance to dry and callus over. We don't want to put a freshly cut surface right into the potting mix. It's likely to rot. The other thing I want to mention about these potatoes here is this is not a potato that I got at the grocery store. This is what's called a seed potato or a certified seed potato. Obviously, it's not a seed, it is a potato. But the key thing is if you get a potato from the grocery store, it is almost certain to have one or more bad pathogens on it. And if you plant it, not only are you going to have problems with your potato crop this year, but you can actually cause some harm to your soils for a number of years so that it makes it hard to grow certain crops related to potatoes, okay? So we got a certified seed potato. I cut it into several wedges. I allowed the cut sides to callus, and now we're ready to plant. So I explained, I've got the potting soil, I've excavated the middle out, and now I'm going to plant 3 chunks in there. I'm going to make sure that the most prominent eyes or growing points are more or less planted upwards. You don't need to have a level and make sure they're vertical, just on the upward facing side. So I've placed those 3 roughly in a triangular shape to give them all even space. I'm now going to use my hand to just backfill the potting mix that I had scraped out of the way so that now there's roughly 2 inches of potting mix covering those potato chunks. We just want to make sure they're in a dark situation, not a light situation, and also that they've got potting mix on top so that they stay moist during the process where they start to grow. So you notice over here, I've got another pot with some additional potting mix. That's because, like I said, I only filled this about 3/5 of the way. So here's what we can expect over the next couple of weeks. These plants are going to take about a week to start to actively grow, right? They're going to put out roots and vegetative shoots from those eyes. Once they start to grow, we're going to wait about another week. So we're about 2 weeks into the process from today, at which point their growth will have reached about the height of the rim of this pot. That's when I'm going to use this potting mix here to backfill around them. I'm going to bring the soil line right up to within an inch of the rim of the pot. I'm going to cover all of those new shoots right up to their necks, essentially, and we'll just leave the newest tuft of growth exposed to the sun. That's going to encourage these plants to actually put out more potatoes, and we'll get better production when we harvest later on this year. So we've got our seed potato cut into chunks, planted. We're ready now, except for 2 last steps. First, I've got some all-purpose granular garden fertilizer here. I'm using, I don't know how much of a handful that is, 1/4 of a handful. And I'm going to spread that around on what is now the surface. Just like potting up any plant, I'm going to water it in. And I already moistened this potting soil a little bit before we planted, so it wasn't dusty and wanting to blow around. So now I'm going to water it in, making sure I settle the potting mix around my newly planted potato chunks. And momentarily here, we're going to probably start getting some dripping and drainage out of the bottom of the pot, which will indicate, there we go. That indicates that the potting mix has been moistened all the way down. We want that fully moistened because that water is what's going to basically activate these chunks of potato to start growing over the next week. So, did that look hard? It didn't feel hard, pretty easy. We've planted potatoes in a pot. This is great for terrace gardens, patio gardens, etc. And we'll come back in a few months and see how many potatoes we get out of these 3 little chunks. Hey, gardeners of the internet, it's Joel again. We planted these potatoes in May. Then I zipped off to South America to Ecuador with the land of the origin of potatoes. And now I'm back. Now it's October. We're at the end of the first week of October, and the potatoes have done their thing. And so basically, I just want to show you what that thing is, okay? So we've got our pot here. You remember we filled it about 3/5 of the way, and then it was filled up a little bit more once the potatoes got up, broke the surface of the pot. Now it's time for this. This is the fun part. This is the easy part. We're going to harvest, okay? So look at those potatoes. Haha, psych, that's just a tiny bit. There's so many more, but I'm just going to get these vines out of the way and show you the real wealth that we have below. I want to point something out. You're going to have, anytime you harvest potatoes, you're going to have potatoes that are tiny. You're going to have potatoes that are pretty small, and then you're going to see lots of potatoes that are a size you're used to seeing from the grocery store. And a lot of people don't know what to do with these tiny ones. They're just as good, if not better, than the big ones. I like to take the tiny ones, make a bowl of those by themselves, and just lightly steam them, put a little butter and salt on them, and eat them like that. They're absolutely delicious. Okay, so continuing pulling things out. Just kind of knocking off any potatoes back into the pot as I go here. And then I'm going to take the whole pot, turn it upside down on the table here, and that's when we get to see the real goodies. Okay, and let me just show you by tilting it first. You can already see there's a few on the top. And something really important to keep in mind, these were done very well. All the potatoes were covered by soil during the whole growing season. But keep in mind, if a potato is up at the surface and it's getting sunlight, it will turn green and start to photosynthesize. And any portion that's green is going to have some nasty alkaloids that can make your stomach pretty upset. Doesn't mean you need to throw out that whole potato, but it does mean before cooking it, you should trim off anything green. As long as you can't see green anymore, the rest of that potato is just fine to eat. Okay, see if I can do this gracefully. So far, so good. All right. Now, we probably won't have too many in the very bottom, so I'm just going to get some of this material out of the way. Caught it twice. Will I catch it the third time? Okay, and now we're getting to the tater zone. So I'm going to put the pot down, and I'm going to just break this open. Oh, look what we're starting to get here, folks. Look at this. Big fatty, several smaller ones, and then several baby ones on top of it. And this variety is red Lesota, you may recall. Interestingly, this little piece right here, this tattered, rotten little piece of skin, that's actually, and here's another one, these were the original potato chunks with the eyes that we put in here, our seed potato chunks, okay? So they have completely disintegrated, and the starches in them was used in the initial growth of these potato plants to get them up until they could have their own leaves in the sun, photosynthesizing and producing their own energy. So let's see how quickly I can pick out all these potatoes in here and get them up to the front so you can see them on camera. Can you hear it? I can practically hear bubbling oil in a pan. Frying these potatoes up. Yum, yum. And if you recall, I believe we put 3 seed potato chunks into this pot. So that was like 1 potato. And so, I don't want to make this a math lesson, but the multiplication effect is pretty good. Also, I found a peanut. A squirrel must have buried this at some point. By the way, folks, all this potting mix, this was potting mix that we'd grown other stuff in last year in that same container. I think it might have been broccoli or strawberries or something. The important thing, it wasn't potatoes or anything in the potato family. And I mention that because you don't need to throw this potting mix out. You can use it again, but I strongly recommend that you don't go back-to-back years growing potatoes or potato relatives, because things in the same family tend to have the same disease issues. And if we grow things in that same family back to back to back in one bit of potting soil, we are likely at some point to run out of luck and get one of those diseases in there that then ruins your crop. So grow something else in your twice used potting mix. Okay, I think I've gotten all the potatoes out of here. So let me just make a little victory stack up here. Look at that. These things might as well be called magenta lasotas, not red lasotas. Here's a couple of those little cuties that I'll probably pull to the side and just steam, like I said. And then, you know, you're going to get some of these big freaky mamas like that are also just as good to eat. And here I broke one in half just so I could show you the nice, lovely insides. We didn't have to do that much work. It was the planting, just keep them watered, a little bit of fertilizer throughout the season, and now you get to eat them. That's it.